It's time again for the Villages Market Report, Real Estate Market Report. This is the second quarter of 2025. Welcome to the Gary Abbott YouTube channel. Every quarter for a number of years, I've been doing this Real Estate Market Report. Today, I'm adding some additional stuff to what I usually do. And I'm getting going to give some tips at the end, or at least some advice that I gave some other people who saw me in the Villages and asked me some questions. You'll learn something by this because I think the Villages, again, looking at the numbers, is doing way better than I think many expected. All you have to do is go to the new section, take a look at all the building down there. You don't build if you don't sell. You sell, you keep building. And I think that's been their philosophy all along, even before I ever came to the Villages. So with that, let's jump right into the report. So I'm going to skip over the very first page of the report, which is the totals for the Villages. And I'm going to go right into each section, just giving you some new numbers that I don't usually give, but I thought this time around I'm going to get a little more specific. So we're looking at pre-owned homes in Spanish Springs, because that's all they have. They don't have new homes. And I look basically, for anybody who's watching for the first time, I basically look at closed. And as you can see by this report, I'll also highlight just this one time at the bottom of the page of each of these pages, and I'll leave a link to this report in my description of this video. But you can see the average price per series of homes, which will be very helpful if you're looking at, say, purchasing a designer home. Just what is the average cost that it's going for? Something to keep in mind, and it's broken out by area. And the Villages is chopped up into different areas, Spanish Springs being the oldest. So let me just go into what I want to tell you in this part. So I look at closed. They closed in the second quarter of 136 homes. It's up slightly from the first quarter, which was 122. And I say slightly, they're up 11%, 11.5%. Then we're going to take a look at Lake Sumter Landing. I'm going to do the same comparison. They're all pre-owned homes in Lake Sumter. The second quarter they sold 215. They closed on 215. And in the first quarter they closed on 152. They're up 41.4% from the previous quarter. That's a lot. That's a jump. That is a jump. Now let's go to Brownwood. Brownwood now we have both. We have both pre-owned and new. So we want to take a look at that. Let's just look at pre-owned. Pre-owned closed 232. Again, I'm going to say up slightly if you think 11.5% is slight, compared to 208 that they sold in the first quarter. And that gives you the 440 that were done. Up 11.5%. Now, nothing new closed, but they did close on 74 before in the previous quarter. And that makes sense. There shouldn't be really many new, but they still have 17 pending. And so I'm studying the map a lot to try to understand this kind of break point of where those homes are, because that's kind of an area that is kind of like Sawgrass. We're probably to the end of having new homes available, but there is a few still out there. Actually, I think what we can see in Brownwood, I think those 74 and 17, I guess I just want to add this in. As I look at their map, I think it's the new area Richmond. I think when they added that area, they built it up at the end of last year and sold in this year. That's the 74 and the 17 pending. My guess would be the final phase of Richmond. So let's move on to Sawgrass. Sawgrass has pre-owned. Pre-owned, the second quarter they sold 143. That's up from the first quarter of 102. That's a 40% increase. Again, that's a big jump in pre-owned. Now, new, they sold 21, down from the 58 they sold in the first quarter. Now, this is kind of the wrapping up. There shouldn't really be hardly any new homes available in the Sawgrass Grove area. I'm assuming the enclave might have had some lots and a few homes that they needed to finalize sold. Like people were building their own to their own specifications in the enclave and they just hadn't completely closed on it. That's what I'm really assuming from Sawgrass on the new. So they're down, but I think you kind of got to rule it out because of how we're closing out selling of new homes in that section. Now we go to the good one, Eastport. Eastport's where all the activity is. This is the bulk of the activity for the villages and probably should be. They sold 888 homes in the second quarter of 2025. That's up from the 683 that they sold. It's a 30% increase from first quarter to second quarter. That is a big increase in the brand new homes. So in the pre-owned, they sold 105 compared to the first quarter of 74. So they're up another 41.9% in pre-owned in the Eastport area. So that's a really interesting number if we're looking at this, that both pre-owned in the Eastport area that was previously built and the new homes is up. So what I want to note, I just making this note, last quarter I looked at the pending for new and it was much larger than what was sold. This time they have 874 pending, and I'm going to hold my expectations whether it's going to be next quarter is going to be higher. It is the summer. Most people will tell you the market slows down. But I think the excitement over Eastport is building for those that have been thinking for a while to pick their right lot and their home. Now let's go to totals overall. That's what we all want to see is the totals overall. So let's go back to the very first page and let's kind of go over those totals. It's clear that the numbers are up. When you do this comparison, and now what I got to do with the totals is I've got to go to my own spreadsheets to kind of show you what these totals mean. So let's do that. So here we are at my spreadsheet and it's gone through multiple changes over the years, but here's what I've done for 2025. In the yellow are last year's numbers for third and fourth quarter. I've left those in so I can get a total if there were no changes. Now we know there's going to be changes, but you can see first quarter, second quarter, you can see the total homes closed went from 1473 to 1740. So there was a jump from one quarter to the next. And they jumped up from the first quarter. And this is my comparison too. I'm comparing not from the first quarter to the second quarter, but from last year's first quarter and last year's second quarter. So last year, the first quarter, we increased the total number of homes to 172 more, which was 13% increase. This year, second quarter went 197, but compared to the second quarter, it was 12.7. So we're hanging in that 13% over the previous year. And so I take those numbers and then I add in last year's numbers for third and fourth quarter to give me a grand total. Now you can clearly see here, the other thing I like to look at compared to 2024 is what is the average price of the home sales. And it was interesting, the first quarter, the average sale price for new homes last year was $421 in the first quarter. This year was $391,000. We're in the thousands. And then the second quarter last year, $408,000. Now it's $477,000. So we kind of flipped. We were down in the first quarter on average price of a home to now we're over. And I think what I'm seeing is a very consistent rising of the average price. Doesn't mean you still can't get the same model home for about the same price as years before, but the market has probably shifted to more expensive homes. And this could be part of the discussion I had in one of the videos, people picking their lot and custom building their own home, which will probably raise the cost of the average cost of a home in the village. That doesn't say they don't already have pre-built new homes for sale. So I did something new and I wanted to kind of go to it. Now I have all the years, so I decided to just kind of show you in 2021 when I first started, here are the sold homes. Pre-owned was 3,118 for the whole year. New homes was 4,004, which gave you a total of 7,122. You can see in 2022 it dropped by almost 1,000 homes. Well, actually more than 1,000 homes to 6,113. Then in 23, it would drop even more to 5,601. I think this was the COVID effect. There's no doubt that COVID people panicked, and then as the whole world was opening up, they definitely sold less homes. Last year it picked up to 5,800, and by adding in the second half of the year being flat, which I doubt it will be, it's going to surpass 2022. We're going to go all the way back to where the records, I believe, of the COVID years, 2021, we're going to be getting back there. And this is the chart that I did. The chart just does pre-owned in a blue line, new homes in the other. And you can see the Villages is pretty consistent on the numbers of sold. You know, when you can go from 5,600 to 6,000, you know, you're talking 500 homes in this kind of community. They're selling 6,000 homes per year. That's pretty consistent. And I did this one more comparison. I'm going to put the numbers on the screen. I decided to do a comparison of homes sold in the first 6 months. So I broke it out this way. The Villages sold pre-owned 1,489 in 2025 in the first half. New homes, they sold 1,724. Now I'm going to compare this up to the MLS, which I don't have access to all their data. But watching other YouTubers and getting kind of a feel for the average sold per week is about 39, 40 homes. I'm going to go with 40 homes. It fluctuates between 30 and 58, I think, is a high earlier this part of the year. But if you multiply that out 26 weeks, half a year, you're looking at 1,040 homes. So based on that, I'm looking at sold in the first 6 months. there were 4,253 homes sold, approximately. So MLS represents about 25% of all the homes sold in the last 6 months. The village agents, between the pre-owned and new together, they represent about 75% of the sales. So there is a pretty big difference in the number of homes sold. Now, this doesn't mean what's on the market, what's available, and what you can look at. It's just talking about sold. And the Villages clearly has an advantage. One of the advantages they have is they only build the new homes. The MLS doesn't, they only sell pre-owned homes in the Villages. And the Villages has two kind of real big options for you. You buy something that they already built and is ready for you, or you go through the process of buying a lot, customizing your home and building what you want, where you want it. That to me is a huge advantage, because if I look back at it today, after being here 4 years, if you really want to make sure that you are not going to be one of these individuals that buys in the Villages and moves 2-3 times because you're not happy with what you got, doing the custom lot and building exactly what you want, I'm not guaranteeing that you won't still want to move, but you'll probably put in your house everything that you want and the sizes that you want. So that is a huge advantage for the Villages. But I'm not discouraging anybody from making sure they get an MLS agent to look at MLS properties and a Villages agent to look at both pre-owned and the new. That is something that you definitely have to do. Well, I hope you like this video. A few other numbers that I threw in, but I like my last one. Kind of shows you that the Villages is consistent. No matter what anybody says, the Villages marches on even in these high interest rates. And I would say, it's a delicate market, a real estate market. But in the Villages, it stays pretty consistent. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do me a big favor, like and subscribe, helps me out. And if you see me in the Villages, say hi. Thanks for watching.